Hi, welcome to our new edition of 20 for 20 in 2020. This is the second time I'm getting together to talk to people who are advisors and who help people decide on who they want to work with on the important areas of their lives, their families' lives, their businesses, and the way they would go about it is meeting 20 people through these interviews that I will be asking 20 questions of between now and the end of 2020. So these are very important discussions with accountants, attorneys, financial advisors, and others who we feel we'd like to get to know before we engage them in the important aspects of our lives. I'm Ella Newman, a trusted insurance advisor with Norton Advisory Group, and I give people strategic ways to improve their estate planning, business succession planning, retirement, and long-term care decisions that they make towards their ultimate goals. And today I'm going to be having a wonderful opportunity to introduce you to Moira Laidlaw, who is the managing partner of the firm of Hollis, Laidlaw and Simon, located in Mount Kisco, New York. Moira and I met years ago and sort of lost track a bit, and then we wound up getting reintroduced as a result of COVID because we were both involved in a virtual networking opportunity. So now we have reconnected and started working on things together and thinking about strategies where we can plan for clients and do some work together, which is very exciting. And so I want to welcome Moira, and Moira has been busy working on a number of things with her firm. She is expanding the territory she's involved in, and that's very exciting, especially in these difficult times when she's also dealing with issues related to COVID and other current situations that need attention. So I would like to give you a chance to get to know Moira better, and we're going to get started right away. So welcome, Moira, and are you ready to begin our process?
I'm ready for the journey, Ella.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. So I'm going to start. So first I'm going to say, what would you say the primary focus of your chapter or your practice is?
I would say the primary focus is trust and estates and elder law. You know, we have a firm that also has other departments, but the majority of my day is spent within, you know, the engagements relating to estate planning, administration, and related issues.
That's great. Okay. So what led you to a career that got you to doing this kind of work?
You know, I'd always known I'd wanted to become a lawyer. So maybe there was a slight hesitation with thinking of teaching. I come from a family of educators. And I think it's a funny background because I think that the education background really informs the way that I practice. I want to educate the families and businesses that I work with about why we're recommending what we're recommending. So I think it's actually a good blend of both traditions. But really wanting to, I would say, help people is the driving force for what brought me to it.
That's terrific. So how did you get to work for your current firm?
I joined the current firm in January of 2014. And it was part of a business succession plan for that firm where, you know, it was an opportunity to come in and be able to lead it over time. But it was also a way for me to provide some succession planning for my clients as well, you know, joining a larger firm and having the protection of a larger team to support them.
Where were you prior to coming to this?
Prior to coming to this firm, I had a solo practice, and the solo practice was in Bedford Hills, and it had grown over the years. I had run that solo practice for, I'd say, around 10 years before joining this firm in 2014. And so it was a nice transition. Really enjoy practicing with a firm with nearly 15 lawyers now. Very supportive.
That sounds terrific. Okay. So what would you say some of the highlights of your career have been in terms of your career experience?
So I think the biggest highlight was when I was nominated to the New York State Bar Association's Elder Law and Special Needs Executive Committee. It was the very committee that gave me the training for me to be able to practice in this area. I did a tremendous amount of training through some of the offerings of this committee. Really respected the other committee members. So it was really fun when I was invited to join them on that executive board.
That's really great to know that.
Yeah.
What type of clients do you tend to work with?
I would say a combination of individuals and closely held companies. And the planning relating to both of those sets can be very intertwined. You know, often people are coming to us needing more sophisticated estate planning tools and techniques to utilize because they have a closely held company. So I'd say that's the most common presentation: individual families, and then companies that are struggling with their own transition planning.
Right, that's an area we tend to work with as well, as you know.
Yeah.
What are some of the problems or issues that you wind up helping your clients address?
Well, I liken it to myself. You know, I sometimes will go see the doctor thinking I have a problem with my hip, and it turns out I have a problem with my ankle, which is causing the pain in my hip. So we help clients with the problems that they come into our office with. Most top of mind for our clients are wanting wills, wanting to make sure that they can reduce estate taxes. Many of our clients have no estate tax liability under current law. It's like the exemption amounts are very high. So while we do a fair amount of tax planning for those that have reached those upper limits, the majority of US residents and New Yorkers don't have a tax problem, but they do have some risk if they were ever facing long-term care and long-term care expenses. So we help clients with the problems that they think they have, and then also layer on some added protections, especially in case there's any incapacity during life.
That's a very important approach, and obviously, again, something we can help a lot with as well, to support that with insurance products that enable that.
Absolutely. And the time to get those insurance products is when there isn't a health need.
Exactly.
So if anyone has the ability to kind of work with you and learn more about those products before anything happens, huge to do it. The planners win.
Right, exactly. So when you're working on an estate plan, what goes into your process?
Well, we start every estate planning engagement with a 1-hour complimentary consult. And the reason why we make it complimentary is we need to find out a lot about our clients at this meeting to be able to give an appropriate cost estimate and to be able to diagnose really what needs to happen. And so we want people to be very comfortable, you know, meeting with us, giving us full answers. And so we don't want to charge for that first meeting, because once people are on the clock, they're like, oh no, I'm on the clock. So we want people to get comfortable with us and our process, get to know us, and then we want to allow enough time for us to learn enough about them to know what we need to recommend. From there, we come up with a set of recommendations and a budget. And most of our planning engagements, we work on a project fee. So at the end of the 1 hour, we generally know what the appropriate project needs are and the costs associated with it. And I would say it always begins with that 1 hour meeting.
Perfect, right. How would you assist a client with funding assets into their trust?
Okay, so with every estate planning engagement, everyone needs a will and really good advance directives. Many people also need trust planning. So where there's trust, what we do is we start with creating the trust agreement, but we don't leave our clients there. We help them then identify why we created the trust, which is for it to control certain assets. So we identify the assets that are appropriate for the trust to control, and then we help get the assets into there. Every trust has what's known as a Schedule A. And on Schedule A, you write down what is in the trust agreement. People sometimes make the mistake, and not all law firms are great at this juncture of the engagement. People sometimes make the mistake that writing an asset on Schedule A is what accomplishes the transfer of that asset to the trust. Nothing could be further from the truth. Schedule A, I always explain to my clients, it's like a check register. It's not the actual check, it's not the actual deposit. It's an internal record-keeping mechanism. So then if you consider that, if you write down your house on Schedule A, what you really need to do to get the house governed by the trust is to do a deed from you to the trustee of the trust. That's what gets it governed by the trust. So when we create the revocable trust with our clients, or the irrevocable ones, because sometimes it's an irrevocable trust instead of a revocable one, depending on the objectives, we always help do any deed transfers. We always try to help get an introduction to a financial advisor such as yourself, so we can support the clients in combination with getting the financial accounts retitled to trust where appropriate, or the insurance products owned and controlled by the trust agreement. We really do appreciate always having cooperative, trusted advisors on the other end, because we need to partner together to support the client on that side of the equation.
Right. It's a partnership.
It really is.
It's
Our
working
team,
together.
whatever, yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. Okay. Do you actively help them execute their plan? It sounds like you do, but what else goes into that?
Yeah, so the plan begins with a conversation, then it leads to executed documents, and then it leads to funding. And I like to say to the clients, we are with them every part of the way. We really are. We're not going to just put our clients in complicated legal documents, say project done, game over, and go away. So no, we're definitely there from start to finish.
That's great. Do you provide formal updating, reviews, maintenance appointments, and programs?
That's a great question. It varies so much from family to family that we have no formal set plan that we put in place, but we do urge clients to come back every 3 to 5 years for a check-in appointment. Almost like a dentist postcard reminder, it's time for your annual checkup. Or so very often though, between those markers, there might be major life events. And we also encourage them to contact us if there's a major life event that's going to change, who can help support you if anything happens to you, or what the beneficial interest should be. A marriage, for example, will lead to a major change of beneficiaries. Grandchildren sometimes change to beneficiary changes, with specific requests out to grandchildren.
Right.
So.
Very good. So after that, what is it like to work with you initially and in the long run?
Yeah, so initially we have a team of 9 lawyers in our trust and estates department. And so in terms of working with us initially, people generally feel well supported by the team lawyers and paralegals who help get the documents drafted and the trust funded. But what also is comforting to our clients about those 9 lawyers is we have this ability to be able to say to a client, we are here for the decades. Like the law firm that I joined in 2014 has been in existence since the 1970s. And, it's comforting to clients to know that it's not just one lawyer. If something happens to that lawyer and they don't know where their very important original documents are now being held, it's very nice for them to know that we're here. We have this kind of robust history behind us.
Well, that sounds great. I know you covered this a little bit, but let's fine tune it. How do you determine your fees and what you do and what do they include?
Yeah, and very often on the estate planning side of things or the business succession planning, especially for an intra-family company, we can work on a project fee basis because it's all being determined by our client with our advice, and we generally know the scope of the work that needs to be done at the beginning, after that initial conversation. And then when we quote a project fee quote, like it is never more than that. It covers all of our emails, telephone calls, meetings, and anything that's attendant to implementing that particular plan. Other times though, especially if there are third parties, let's say it's a closely held company and there's a partner and we have to negotiate an agreement with another partner, and that partner is going to be represented by counsel as well. Those types of engagements need to be more hourly, and we tell clients in our experience this is what we would suggest that you budget, but there are directions that it can go in that we can't anticipate. I will say that I try to treat every family as if it's my own. And I think of the junctures in my own life when, if you think about hiring a contractor and doing work in your house and it feels like you've written a blank check. So I tend to try to overestimate what I anticipate the budget to be. We receive most of our clients from trusted, advisors and happy clients. And you never have a happy client where someone is surprised by a legal invoice.
Right. That makes sense.
We try.
That makes a lot of sense. That really is a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the experiences you've had, excuse me, in mitigating estate taxes?
Again, going back to planning, winning, and planners win, you've got to identify early that you have an estate tax issue. So in that first meeting, we have on our radar, part of why we are asking for all of the asset and value information that we're asking in that first meeting is try to get out in front of any potential estate tax exposure. There are some common themes to saving on estate tax. One of them is that if you think an asset's going to appreciate greatly over time, you want to gift it in either in whole or in part before it appreciates. So life insurance is a great example of that, Ella. You want to get that life insurance policy into the trust either from the beginning, preferably, or earlier in the development of its cash value. And that'll achieve more estate tax savings over time if the policy is transferred at that juncture. So we're looking to do as early juncture planning as possible. We find, though, that people wait because they're busy working hard to accumulate that wealth. They don't make time for themselves. It's a classic example of always putting your company first and your clients first and your own self second. So when people come to us and they've already accumulated wealth, we help them develop, just efficient gifting strategies and efficient tax planning strategies on death, especially between spouses. Very important that spouses plan while both spouses are living. There are things that we can do in the documents that we can only do when both spouses are still with us. So we need our married couples to come see us sooner rather than later in order to double an estate tax exemption across the married couple. The last thing I'll say on this, we're licensed to practice in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. New York has a very pernicious estate tax situation where it looks like we have a great exemption, but if you exceed it by a small amount, you lose it. So it seems like you have a $6 million exemption, but really you have a $0 exemption if you go over that amount by a small percentage. So really important if you're in that range of 6 million as a single person or 12 million as a married couple. Super important to do some tax efficient planning to stay under the exemption amount and not go over it by a small amount. You go quickly, literally, Ella, from owing zero in tax to writing a $400,000 check.
Oh my God.
It's really awful.
Well, that's why they need to talk to you and get that planning in place right away. Very important. Okay. Now, in terms of what's included in creating estate plans, would you include wills and trusts and life insurance? What do you incorporate in that estate plan?
Yeah, so, well, I always make really clear that we see a lot, we know a lot, but we don't sell anything. Like, we don't sell life insurance. So when we're making life insurance recommendations, we are referring those out, and we're just saying, in our experience with this kind of asset picture, we really recommend that you meet with someone like Ella because you could benefit from it. But really, these are, when we're looking at an estate plan, we always do a will, we always do advance directives. We are often recommending trusts and often recommending that life insurance be procured and transferred to trust or owned by the trust to begin with. Life insurance is this wonderful estate tax-free pocket of money if it's handled correctly, and provides wonderful liquidity, sometimes during life as well as upon death. And then trust planning in New York versus Connecticut, because I'm licensed in both, I want to talk about the importance of trust planning for different reasons in each jurisdiction. In Connecticut, when you submit a will to probate, the Connecticut probate system requires you to provide a financial accounting to the court. New York doesn't. So historically, New York has been a lighter touch probate court. You could go get authority and you don't have to do much else with the court after getting authority. Just a few other submissions, very light afterward. Mm-hmm. Much more supervised, if you will, in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. So in Connecticut, we have long used revocable trusts to avoid that kind of supervision from the court on probate of a will. So just know, big picture, you can use revocable trusts to avoid assets passing under a will. And Connecticut, we've always wanted to do that. New York hasn't been such a priority. Until recently with COVID-19, the court shut down and people who lost loved ones could not get their wills submitted to court even during that particular period. So very important now in light of the pandemic for us to consider revocable trust planning really is not even optional anymore. To me, it's just the more responsible way to plan going forward, regardless of whether you're in a high-touch probate court jurisdiction, a high-fee probate court jurisdiction. It's almost irrelevant. Trusts are almost always going to be better to utilize now.
Right.
Very different than even what I would have said or answered six months ago.
Right. Well, you just answered the next question I was going to ask. I was going to ask your views on revocable living trusts. So
do them.
Clearly made that very important, and something that has changed in the last 6 months in terms of how important it is and where you live and how you're going to utilize them. So that's very meaningful. Right. So what other issues do you address in your firm?
I think the biggest issue in our trust and estates practice, people come to us for wills and tax advice very often. And then we ask one question, which is, do you have long-term care insurance? And they pause. And then the answer is often no. And so not having long-term care insurance is probably the biggest risk that most of my clients face in developing and protecting themselves. You know, that they're often worried about inheritance, but not having long-term care insurance will often lead to there not being any inheritance. So in general, we're recommending, if people are still insurable, that they consult with someone about whether they're even still insurable and what it would cost. And then from there, we're building potentially a plan relating to an irrevocable trust, because using irrevocable trusts can really protect in that context if the family member needs to access the local state Medicaid program. So in New York, it's called Medicaid. In Connecticut, it's called Title 19. In California, it's called Medi-Cal. But basically, it's Medicaid, which is a poverty-based program that will step in where Medicare leaves off. So Medicare will provide rehab, Medicaid will cover the long-term stay, will also, even in New York, provide up to 24 hours of home care. So we're really helping families a tremendous amount in that area of long-term care risk analysis, not just estate tax analysis.
Right.
And then when we think about, Ella, the partnering that we're doing on closely held companies, you think about a primary, the first generation that started the company wanting to transition that company to the next generation that has sweat and toiled in it for a good decade. If the equity transfer hasn't happened before a long-term care event occurs, that's also going to put all of that equity of the company at risk and potentially sacrifice it for transition to the next generation. So all of those things are in the mix. It's not just taxes, it's not just long-term care. It's really all in the mix. And then thinking about that next generation.
Absolutely. And as you say, we need to start thinking about that as people are in their late 40s, 50s. Don't wait till you're in your 60s. I mean, obviously still do it if you haven't done it and you're in your 60s, but the sooner they get to these issues and questions with you, the better it is.
Yeah.
And there's so much to be done.
Final thing on that note, Ella, that I would say is, besides just the asset protection, whether for taxes or long-term care, thinking about the people you want helping you at these critical junctures, who has the right skill set to help you. You and I talk about this in other contexts, but people generally want to treat their children fairly and equally, but children have different strengths and weaknesses. And if you could identify the family members, the friends who are really going to be able to step up and help you in that moment of need, it's important to have the conversation and to not treat everyone equally when people have different skill sets that they bring to the equation.
Absolutely. Very important. How long does it take you to complete an estate planning project?
I would say really from start to finish, the most it should take is around 2 to 3 months. And it can go faster if the client's able to make choices a little quicker. But sometimes people just need that amount of time in order to make the different decisions related to the estate plan. And then we tell our clients when they hire us, you are literally, part of this project fee is for us to nudge you. Because clients want to do it, but then they also want to avoid it. And so we are the kindest, smiliest harassers that you are going to find out there, Ella. Like, we really want people to get this done because we know what happens when people don't get it done. We do a fair amount of adult guardianship court work in New York. That is a very hard place for families to find their solution. So we know working with us ahead of time will keep these same families out of a really expensive court proceeding. And so that's why we nudge people very kindly.
That's very kind, Laura. They need that. When do you send the estate planning documents to the client to review?
So once we have all the information needed to draft, we prepare the full set of documents, we mail it to the clients, and then we ask them to immediately schedule the next meeting. Because in that next meeting, we can go over the drafts with them. So we want them to have the physical documents, but we don't want them to wait until they feel like they understand them. Because for better or worse, there's still a lot of thickness to our estate planning documents. And that thickness can be very intimidating. So we know that we need the documents to be thick. Like, whenever a client brings me a thin envelope with all of their prior estate planning documents, I know I need to start as if nothing exists, because you need to give your executor and your agents a lot of authority. Yeah.
I think people don't realize that. That's very important. Okay. And who in your office would act in your behalf if you were not available to discuss the client's issues with them?
Yeah, we have a really good team. So as managing partner, as you can imagine, I have a fair amount on my plate. So every consult I talked about, that initial complimentary consult, from the get-go, we have another lawyer on the team in that meeting with me and the client. And so we operate as a team, and then anyone who's assigned to the matter is able to answer any question the client has. It's a really good system.
That's very good. People can get very comfortable with that. So our last question's a little bit different. It's what would you tell us about yourself that we can't find out on the internet?
It's a fact that I really love about myself, which is that I'm one of 8 children. So I have 4 sisters and 3 brothers. My sibling relationships are near and dear to me. And having grown up in that household, it was just my parents, who, God bless, they are no longer with us, but they raised us, with just so much love. And I mean, I shared a bedroom. I was on the younger end, so there were always like 3 or 4 of us to a bedroom. There was a lot of closeness, a lot of fighting as children, I'm sure, but very much close-knit group as we're older. And when I work with clients, I tell them that I feel like a little bit of a sibling specialist. And I know sibling rivalry. I know it really well, and I know sibling love. And in every plan I help a family create, I want them to create a plan that's going to keep their children close. So I don't want to do anything that the client thinks is a good idea. That kind of, when you think it through, is going to lead to those siblings not having a relationship with each other anymore. Really important to kind of consider the family dynamic as part of the overall plan.
I think that is so definitely so important. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's great, Maura. So
thank you for having me.
This has been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to learn more about you, your firm, and your career. But please let us know how we can best reach you. So how would our audience reach out to you?
Okay, so the telephone number is 914-666-5600. You can really speak with anyone, but my extension is 336. And then our website is hollislaidlaw.com. My email is mlaidlaw@hollislaidlaw.com. So really a pleasure, Ella.
Well, I just wanted to thank our audience. I also wanted to tell them that I appreciate their attending this 20 for 20 in 2020. And as I mentioned, it is important, as we were saying in our conversation, to take a look at their current insurance holdings now, because as we know, there have been many changes in the insurance industry, in the economy, in interest rates, and there needs to be a review. Just like you were saying with estate matters, you need to look at your paperwork and your background and your everything related to that every 3 or 4 years. We are offering a complimentary review that we can do for anyone that would like us to do that, of their insurance documents. And all they need to do is contact me at ella@nortonadvisorygroup.com, and I'll be happy to set up a virtual meeting for them. And in the meantime, they will all be hearing from me. We are going to place this video on the LinkedIn's and on our websites, and hope you do go to our websites, to Maura's website and mine at Norton Advisory Group, and Maura's at her firm's group. And you will see more about us and what we do, and you will have an opportunity to see and review our videos as well. Hope to catch you all at our next 20 for 20 in 2020. And till then, stay healthy, and thank you very much for joining us today. Bye-bye.